Hi everybody, Angel Reader here from Granny Talks. This time Granny's going to talk about homesteading. I spent over 30 years living in Texas. I'd say originally from Illinois and Arkansas, but I spent over 30 years there in Texas, and I did learn how to grow in a semi-desert climate. The benefits to actually living there and growing there were actually pretty good. One, you could see the storms that were coming. That's a big thing. I didn't realize how big of a thing until we moved here, where you can't even see a car coming until it's, almost in front of your house. You can hear it, but you can't see it. I live in a very wooded area, and the last storm we had really shook things up a lot for us. It was the kind of experience that you go, whoa, wait a minute. This is not like I thought. And that's the reality of homesteading. First of all, you better be prepared for working from sunup, or actually before sunup to sundown, depending on how much you plan to have on your homestead. Now, my parents bought this place, and they had these beautiful, grand ideas of putting in animal pens and for goats and getting some chickens. And the problem was, first of all, it takes $1,000 to take out one tree here. Have a professional come in and do it. You can find it cheaper, but I promise you they're not insured, and your home could be at risk because you have no idea if they really know what they're doing. Reliability on these lumberjacks are not the greatest out here. You may hire somebody and they're going to want pay up front and may not show up for 2 months if they show up. So my parents had this idea that they were going to use their retirement, clear enough land to do all these things. Well, they got just barely enough land cleared to put their house on. And the house is actually too big for the clearing. Because, okay, I've got maybe 20 foot between my front porch and the forest. But the trees that are sitting at the edge of the forest right here are 30 to 40 foot tall. It is a reality check, because even though they managed to clear back 20 foot, if the tree is taller than that, you're still in harm's way. And I got probably another 10 foot of trees that I need to clear away from my property in every direction. Now, 60 years old almost, that is a big job for anybody to take on. Even a young person is going to go, whoa, this is a lot. Cutting down the trees and then breaking them down from, getting all the branches off of it and getting the bark off of it so you don't lose your lumber, because you leave the bark on it, it's going to rot your trees that you cut down. You got to get the bark off of it. And then you got to remove this massive tree trunk. And I'll tell you what, it was just an incredible task. We had to take down some trees at the bottom of our property near our power lines, because the trees had gotten so big and the branches were reaching out too close to the power lines. And if we didn't maintain these trees, they're ours, and we took out the power line, we're actually responsible for the damage to the power company, who uses my land at will. But I'm grateful they do, because I have electricity. So I want you to know that there is a flip side and another flip side to this, but still I have trees standing down there that are too close to the power lines. And my husband and I alone, we can do it. We can do it. But it would be weekend tasks, because he had to have a job, pay for this electricity, which is not cheaper here. Well, it's cheaper here than in Texas. That's for sure. We're not on nuclear power. We're on water power, hydro. And it has pitfalls that, unless power lines are taken out, the nuclear energy doesn't have. But it's okay, because they work really quick to try and get everything repaired. Like in the instance of this big storm where we had several F3 tornadoes come through our area, we were very blessed that they didn't reach us. The storms were terrifying. Watching these trees swaying 20 foot taller than my house is far away from them. That's a 40-foot tree. And knowing if it comes a big enough wind to take that tree over, it's going to take out my house, without a doubt. And I've had the reality of this since we moved here. My husband went out here and did remove some more of the trees, so that the risk is not as high. But it's the bigger ones that we have to figure out how to drop them without hitting our house. And so they're still standing. Now, if you know anything about rain, you know it washes away soil. So if you come out here and you clear a bunch of the soil up top, first of all, it's going to begin a drying process. That's when you're going to find out what your soil is really made of: clay, sand, or soil. You got to make pretty much your own soil here. My parents brought in a truckload, literally, to put up here, because what they discovered was mostly ash, sand, and clay. Not very good for growing. Now, some of this might be okay for growing, but not when you've got 3 foot of clay and then bedrock. You know, it just won't grow. So everything holds the water and drowns in it, basically. Now, if you come up with a different kind of growing system, you probably could do some kind of hydroponic gardening with the clay, because it does hold water so well. But then you got to deal with the sand. Now, they say sand is a good water purification. And yes, it is, to a point. It depends on how contaminated the sand is. Now, we do have some good soil on the surface from all the leaves and all the branches and everything that has decayed. I'm going to be honest. It is a beautiful, exceptionally beautiful place here. But when you take away the veil of the beauty of this place, it's hard work, beyond hard work, normal hard work. Your yields are, in a lot of the cases, not what they should be. Now, when I run my garden in the house, where I can control the environment for my plants, they actually do really well. The yields are much better, much bigger. When I move them out, they die. So, or they're stop yielding altogether. So just recognize, unless you have grown up in the area, the climate is going to affect you physically. It's going to affect your endurance, because my husband and I, on a 78-degree day in Texas, was just perfect weather. Not too hot, not cold, good weather to be outside. Here, 78 degrees, and you add in the woods and the humidity that the forest holds, it's about 85 to 90 degrees in actuality. So when you get up and you move, even a little bit, you're just pouring sweat off. Now, I'm used to working out in the sun in Texas, and I would, of course, sweat, and that's how I knew I was good. When I stopped sweating, I knew I needed to get out of the heat. Out here, it happens so fast that my legs will begin to cramp because there's no more moisture in my muscles from sweating in just such a humid environment. I didn't grow up in this environment, so it affects my body in ways I didn't anticipate. Now, I thought, I used to love winter. Was my favorite time of the year. I grew up in Chicago, mostly area, so big snows, it's normal. Out here, big snow means you better have a week's worth of food or more in your pantry and your refrigerator. And if your power goes out, you better pray you have a generator and a fireplace if it's in the winter, because you are not going to be able to keep your house warm. You are not going to be able, and the solar companies, we checked into those, put the solar panels on. They wanted us to finance more than half of what the house value and land value is. They wanted us to finance $80,000 to put this solar system in, which my neighbors say is not reliable because our trees are so tall. It can't give you the power system you think you're going to get. Not worth the money. Because once you add on the finance charges for that 80,000, it's over 160 that you are actually paying out. You have to be kind of realistic with things. I know people have become accustomed to living in this unrealistic world, except for those who really put in the muscle to survive in it. The reality is, it's impacted them well. They're well aware. But a lot of people have these dreams that they think, oh yeah, I'm going to go there and do this. And unless you go there and get it ready for you to do that, so you actually know what it consists of, you ain't got a chance in hell. You'll be running back to your old way of life as fast as you can. We just went a few days without electricity here while it was really hot, very muggy, and the tornadoes had taken out, the whole state had no power. So it wasn't just our area. The whole state of Arkansas, no power, absolutely none. And it was a very hard time. If we didn't have our generator, I probably would have ended up in the hospital. We had no running water, so you couldn't cook, clean. Well, you could cook on a grill, because our house was 100% electric. Yet, at the same time, I know what it costs to buy propane. Oh, I don't want to deal with that headache if I don't have to. Went through that in Texas. That was a nightmare. Propane is not a better resource. And all my appliances are electric. So, yeah, not happening. But over those couple of days, I learned, because we had no charcoal, I had to learn how to get my grill going. Well, thankfully, I do live in the woods. I have a shitload of firewood, but you can't start a fire with a log. It just won't burn. It just won't stay lit. Now, so you're going to have to make your kindling. And everything was saturated because of the storms. So I had to go find some of our cedar logs that we use for getting our fireplace going in the winter, and start peeling that stuff off by hand. I finally got so tired of it, I had to grab a chisel and start breaking loose some of it so that I could make wood chips to burn to cook our food. And it worked, and our food was actually quite good. A little seasoning from the cedar wood was delicious, actually. But, so I know I got that part of it covered. But what do I do about my well? When the power is out, I have no access to water then. I have no pump where I can go just start pumping the water. And our well is super deep. I think they said it was something like 700 foot down, so they could get into the reservoir of water beneath the property. 700 foot deep. That's almost triple what our well was in Texas. I mean, in Texas, you're talking 30, 40, maybe 50 feet, 100 foot at most. Not here. Up here, on this part of the mountain, you have to blast through rock. Trying to dig a well here would be impossible. Not to say that it couldn't be done with a whole crew of people getting after it. It probably could be done, but they would probably look for a better spot to put in a well. And you go down lower, of course you're closer to the water table. But, so, living here without electricity is highly dangerous. Sorry, I was trying to see what my cat was clawing. Because, first of all, you have nowhere to cool yourself. Secondly, there's no water. And thirdly, when the lights are out here and you're in the house, it's pitch black. Even with no curtains on the windows, everything open to let light in, this place is pitch black. Now, if there's a moon outside, you've got a little more light outside than you do inside. If it's a thumbnail moon, or what they call a no moon, it is as pitch black as it is in the house. And it is nowhere near safe if you have to move around and you have no light source. We're lucky. We have lanterns and stuff like that that my mother had very intelligently thought to keep. We have our fireplace, but I promise you, only half of my house is going to get warmed up in the winter. So I'm going to have to worry about pipes if our power goes out. Thankfully, no water will be running. But when the well kicks back on, because electric kicks on and water tries to go through those frozen pipes, that's a problem. Which means that in the winter, if the well goes down, I need to unplug it until I'm sure the ground is not frozen. That means all the time I won't have water. So you need to be realistic if you are thinking about moving out to a place that is as beautiful as this. But if you don't know how to survive here, it can be a deadly place. And if you're not living in town like us, we're a good 18 miles from Mountain Home, somewhere in that range, depending on the route you take. And if the roads are open, because the roads do go down, get closed down for repairs from storms like anybody else's roads. But there's a lot of good things to being here, absolutely. Much more peaceful place. Crime levels are very low. The schools here are kind of suffering because parents are refusing to put their kids in schools here. They homeschool them. They think the school system has become too politicized. It's not about educating your children anymore, and they're right, it's not. So this year my husband and I also decided we were not going to run our central heat and air if we can avoid it. And the first thought was the electric bill, of course. But our second thought was maybe we could adjust to this climate, because it is far different than what either one of us are used to. And when I say far different, I do mean far different than what we're accustomed to. Now all the storms we used to see in Texas, they come visit us because they swoop right across, going east usually, maybe a little northeast, but usually if it's up near Lubbock, Amarillo, any of that area, we're going to see it. And usually it can be scary, because there is nothing like watching a 40-foot tree that's 20 foot away from your house swaying and hearing its limbs and its body cracking trying to hold itself up. It's a terrifying prospect. So if you want a homestead, maybe you should do a little more like my daughter and go into a little more smaller rural area. I don't mean go way out in the boondocks. Because one of the things that we missed here during all this was all the resources that we had in Texas that we did not have here. Because we had friends and family all established there. The food banks and everything there are, a lot better than they are here. So there's a lot more resources closer to a city than there are, say, in a place like this. So just know that when you do decide to go out and do something like this, my parents did, you're cutting yourself off from help. And unless you get to know your neighbors and you share the same kind of values and beliefs as they do, so you don't have conflicts with your neighbors, you're saving grace in a time of suffering and hardship. After my mother died, the day after she died, we got hit with a huge storm here, snowstorm. And it was early February, and it snowed for 3 days. And most people would be like, okay, now it's eased up, I can get out of the driveway, I can go to the store and get cigarettes, milk, water, whatever. Luckily, we didn't lose power here, but I was here by myself. And if one of my neighbors hadn't checked on me on the 5th day that I could not get out of my own driveway, and he found out I was stuck in the house, and he talked to another neighbor who came over and cleared the driveway so I could get out and go to the store and get some of the things I needed. If that neighbor had not been so caring, didn't know my parents as well as he did, I wouldn't have had that help. So, if you're going to go into a place like this, remember, community is everything. And you need to make it your most important thing for your survival out here. This is from a real homesteader who has not been able to make her homestead work. Good luck, y'all. Angel out.